Here with Jenny Mitchell. It's such a fantastic honor. We were connected through a mutual colleague, Anne Murphy, which was absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
Jenny, welcome to DPP Office Hours. It's so great to have you with
Thanks for
us.
having me. It's great. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
So the goal today, the goal today is to get to know Jenny a little bit more, to get to
Mhm.
connect with all of you who are here. Jenny is a nonprofit consultant, and we're going to hear about all the different ways she helps fundraisers and nonprofit leaders. And hopefully, we're going to identify a few topics that are super interesting and that have you thinking. Like, I'd like to ask a follow up question. So please
Yeah.
don't hold back, do that in the chat. So, Jenny, let's go right into it. How do you help nonprofits?
Great question. So I want to riff off the donor motivation project. How do we keep and retain those amazing people that support our mission through money? And when I came up through the ranks, I realized that the staff were always the strength in the organization, Lewis. That was always a big realization of mine.
Mhm.
And I felt called to support them. And that's actually, I went from consultant to coach. And that's one thing I really want to highlight today is this idea that once you step into becoming a coach and supporting others, to me, that's where those meaningful conversations happen, which I believe is the kernels of how we retain donors is we have meaningful relationships with them. So how I help them is supporting them with tools and techniques and teaching some of those habits, styles, approaches for meetings and conversations that bring people to those juicy conversations that we always want to have with our donors. That's me.
That's fantastic, Jenny. And I love how you've identified something that we talk a lot about in the
Yeah.
donor participation project too, which is the people and the actual fundraisers, which we
Yeah.
feel need a little bit more support. And
Yeah.
it's so great that you're providing it. And another of the things we talk about a lot is innovation. So we're
Yeah.
trying out a new platform and a new kind of fundraising approach. So you'll see a ticker along down the screen. If you
Cool.
find it super annoying, everybody who's here, please chat us in. We need your feedback. But in the meantime, we appreciate your consideration.
Oh,
So,
I love it.
yeah,
You have to practice what you preach, right, Lewis?
well, that's the whole thing. And I saw another great post today by Jessica Campbell. And she was saying how she's also just wrapping up a season of lots of asking because she has her own
Mhm.
projects and she fundraises for them, etc. So I think that's super important, and I hope to stay connected to that.
You bet. You
So
bet.
you said coaching. What are the typical barriers
Oh,
that you find nonprofit people, because I imagine a coach as somebody who, I sit down in a couch in a dark room
yeah.
and I say, Jenny, this is hell. So what follows that sentence typically?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I try to normalize is this idea of leadership. I've really spent a lot of time trying to define the kind of people I work with and how leadership fits into that. I've been doing, Molly's saying here, the coaching makes the bond. I love that expression, Molly. That's lovely.
Amazing.
The idea of awareness, engagement, and visioning. So awareness looks like, holy crap, I'm managing chaos, right? Anybody who started a new job, they're like, how
Hmm.
does this thing even happen every month? So the awareness that there's chaos, okay?
Hmm.
Moving into engagement leadership is, okay, I've got some habits, I've got some patterns, to use your language, innovations or systems that support. Okay, I can see my gala, I can see how that machine works. There's my annual. People kind of
Hmm.
know what they're doing. And then finally, the third one is visioning, where we all want to get to, which is everybody knows why they're doing things. Everything looks like spokes coming into that central mission. And there's a clarity of the future forward of the organization. Now, I don't mean to burst anyone's bubbles, but engagement, awareness, visioning, you know what comes next.
Hmm.
Engagement, awareness, visioning, because we are
Hmm.
cyclical, right? And helping
Hmm.
people to situate themselves. And then I think the biggest barriers that I see with clients, they're the standard ones: culture, confidence,
Hmm. Hmm.
collaboration, And I would even say dreaming big. I think a lot of us get sold a bill of goods.
That's a good one.
Yeah, get sold a bill of goods that they're supposed to stay small. They're supposed to just do their mission in their little corner. Don't rock the
Mhm.
boat. And I really believe, at least in my business, I've had such great impact and reached more people when I've put myself right outside the line that says "Do not cross." I go over there, and there's really exciting things. But you have to make bold invitations. So that might be
Mhm.
a catchphrase to take away. I hope I inspire people to try new things and be bold, Louis.
This is amazing. Yes. Tell us about some of the clients that you work with and maybe some of these bold invitations that have happened thanks to your invitation.
My work, yeah. So it's funny because I also don't believe in like, here's my work persona and here's my home persona. So I
Mhm.
often will talk about, bringing more meaning to your work and more purpose to your work, but that the ricochets happen at work and at home because we don't
Mhm.
change who we are when we walk into our homes. And the same
That makes sense.
patterns, the same habits. I talk a lot about healing, this idea that we will continue to repeat our same stories, our same narratives, who we are, our definitions of ourselves, unless we're challenged to think otherwise. And I work a lot with people when we come through as fundraisers, we're used to
Mhm.
being the glue, we're used to being the number two. We're not necessarily
Mhm.
used to being number one. And so some of those habits and those patterns we have as number twos, like making everybody else look good, like
Mhm.
deflecting the celebration is not about us, it's about the donor, it's about our boss, it's about the
Mhm.
organ, it's the
Mhm.
mission. We
That's so
deflect.
true.
Isn't
It's
that
amazing
true?
that you explain. I'd never
Yeah.
verbalized this. Okay. Okay. Keep going.
So here's
Fascinating.
the challenge, Louis, is we get so good at that
Mhm.
that we either get pigeonholed, to which point we
Mhm.
struggle to make it to number one, or we feel that we have to make an identity shift, which is very hard to move from the role. And so my thought and my coaching is all about what are the behaviors you want to let go of to embrace this new opportunity. And make no doubt about it, the world needs more underdog leaders. We need people who've come up through the ranks and know what it's like to be excluded, know what it's like to not have a meal on the table, know what it's like to have adversity. I get really excited about how they've overcome it and how they're going
Mhm.
to incorporate that into their leadership style. That's what I want to talk about with my clients.
Wow. Okay. So do you, is it, and you mentioned fundraisers and you
Yep.
mentioned leaders. Do you work with lots? So do you coach people into like ED roles, things like that? Do you
Yep.
work with fundraisers who are just going to stay fundraisers too? Because I could see lots of those patterns, even if you don't want to be,
Number one.
the boss. Number
Yep.
one, being maybe problematic. I mean, I know it's like
Yeah.
good fundraising, right? It's all about the mission, but then it's hard to advocate for the resources we need, right? As a shop, if you're
Yeah.
always number two, no?
Yeah. I call it big elbows, right? Learning to have bigger elbows in a way that
Mm-hmm.
feels comfortable. I'm not talking about becoming a jerk. This is about owning your space. I talk a lot about personal power. And Murphy and
Mm-hmm.
I, we both drink the same Kool-Aid. And I think that can enhance everything. It can enhance ourselves, but it enhances our organizations and our missions as well. I've sort of tiered my company. I have what I
Mm-hmm.
call the next level talent development, which is my
Okay.
mid-level programs. So anybody out there that identifies as a development associate or a manager, that's the programs
Mm-hmm.
for them. I believe in group coaching. I believe that we learn in community from each other. And then at the
Right.
top, at the top, like you do, right? And at the top
Mm-hmm.
of the echelon, there's more of the senior leadership suite and helping them get their message across. I often work with brand new executive directors because they're in that awareness phase going, holy crap, I'm managing chaos. Like, where do I start? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
like, what way is up? Because we sometimes come into these shops and we've been sold a bill of goods. How many of us on the call have been sold a bill of goods where they come into a job and they think the database has 2,000 records, and it turns out, well, that was actually from 10 years ago at a capital campaign that nobody's done any follow-up. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So I like to call a spade a spade. I'm really
Uh-huh.
I'm also very hands-on. So I think the coaching part,
Mm-hmm.
why I like that is although I do use technology for bringing in leads and supporting and building prospect lists, I really do believe in the meaningful conversations, or at least my MO, my DNA, just that's my jam. This kind of thing, Lewis, where we get to be one-on-one. And so I'm always looking for ways to maximize connection, and actually talking and decomposing the meeting, the donor meeting. I don't think we spend a lot of time in practice of what that feels like. There's two important transitions, the introduction, the meet, and the conclusion. And if anybody's ever had a wonderful mentor that lets them come on calls with them, it's amazing what you can learn, right?
Or role play.
We don't do enough of that.
Oh my, no, we just had a session about that at the Donor Participation Project. So folks who are here, and welcome Reed and Heather, maybe share your thoughts about this aspect of training. I feel like we've gone into, like, I don't want to say abdicating responsibility, but managers have come up with the metrics.
Right.
And then they're holding everybody to the metrics. Maybe if you're in a good shop, they're outsourcing the training. And supposedly, after that, it's sink or swim, no?
Yeah.
And I feel sad. Like, your insights are very much on point with all of that.
Well, if not now, I'm getting up there in years, Lewis. So if not now, when was kind of one of the things, I was like,
I think the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. If not now, when? Like, I want to do this better. I want to learn. I want to tweak. Like, I'm a big believer in those small incremental changes, whether it's atomic habits. Okay, so how did that meeting go? What were the parts I liked? A chance to debrief with someone, and coaching and working with a coach is one option, but even just creating those circles or pods in your offices and saying, so this happened, this is how I think I'm going to handle it. There's still a lot of spaghetti being thrown on the walls in our departments and our offices. And I really want to get to a place where we're super intentional. We don't have time to be hoping. So I'm a big believer in bold invitations. It sounds to me like we've gone a lot of great places today in this conversation, and I've gotten to know you a little bit. Would you like to continue this conversation, perhaps towards the pursuit of making a beautiful gift between you and your family and this organization? Is that something you can see?
Ta-da! Beautiful. So this is great. How do you help leaders, or all the people you work with the managing up piece? That's something that's been a lot on my mind recently. And some of the times I post some concepts or some ideas, and it essentially boils down, yes, that's okay, it's all fine, Lewis, but it's really coming from the board. So unless you fix that, how do you help professionals deal with that dynamic?
Yeah, great question. The managing up piece, and I'm going to send a shout out to Karen Osborne. I have her managing up questions from way back when that I pulled at some AFP presentation, and they are golden. And she, it's funny because if you think of what we do, I mean, I'm sort of speaking to my major gifts officers here, I guess a little bit more than others. But if you think, because I'm into meaningful conversations, so connecting with others, you think about the things you do organically. You ask advice. You ask what's most important to them. You ask them how they want to be communicated with. These are the things we learn with donors. It works the same managing up. I'm planning on connecting with you once every 2 weeks. I will be giving you updates. If there's a crisis, how would you like me to reach out to you? These are some of the things that are most important to you. Tell me, in your world, what's most important to you? What does success look like? This is language we know from the donor world. I think that why we don't do it is fear. So to have that kind of open and trusting relationship with your boss and put it all on the table, I see that the term work persona is resonating. It's like we think we have to be a different person when we step over the threshold of our office. And I'm really advocating for a place where you bring your whole self, warts and all, you acknowledge the things. I'm a crap process person. I can do this and go have meetings and connect and build politics and strategy. Process, I have people that help me with that. Just going to own it, right?
That's good. And it's so funny that Heather commented on this
Yeah.
because she is someone who will sing at an event if you need her to. So she's
Hey,
really the full package. I'm a musician and I stopped playing at donor events just because I thought it was weird. But I'm seeing what others are doing, especially Heather, and I'm
wait
feeling
a
the
minute.
need to reconsider.
Do you know that I'm a classical musician? Did we talk about
No,
that yet? Yes.
no. Oh, what do
So
you play?
I am a pianist. I hold a doctorate in piano performance. Lived
So
in New
that's
York
the
City.
DMA in
Yeah.
I meant to ask you about that. Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
gosh. It's my people.
So the nerds, wait. Oh, I
Yeah.
just saw this to somebody. Did you see this in the background? It's a Beethoven
No.
action figure.
Oh, well, you can probably see my Beethoven poster. He's a little small, but you see him like right
Oh
there.
my. Okay.
And
Well,
there's
now
my
I didn't.
piano, actually, for that matter.
Of course.
Yeah, maybe
Okay. Well,
that's funny. I think
amazing.
so. To use the analogy of music, though, I think there's something, a kernel there. If you think of how we learned, it was self discovery, it was trial
Hmm.
and error. The downside of music was it's very hierarchical, right? You learn what your teacher teaches you,
Yeah.
but we were always in collaboration and community, and playing chamber music
Among the
is
musicians, right?
yeah,
I mean, I think the
absolutely
disconnect in the classical music industry is that they're not building community with their audience, which is very much still
no,
you're the audience, you sit there in the dark. We don't care
I
about you,
know,
know. But among the musicians
yeah.
themselves, that's very much true.
Yeah. And at least in piano, I distinctly remember we would take, um, my piece, my books are really heavy. This is a funny story. So I would photocopy the hard parts and just carry
Hmm.
them in my bag because I knew those were the parts I had to practice. And if you think
Hmm.
of that as an analogy for the work we do, it's really easy to skim over things and to kind of, do the easy stuff, do the easy calls or whatever that means to you, rather than really committing and digging in discipline wise to the hard parts or the parts that require a little
Hmm.
bit more of you. But that journey of learning and self-discovery is kind of my jam. I'm a lifelong learner. It's one of my core values. And I learn best from people who have done things. So I'm the person that's like, when you did that direct mail, da, 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 how did you do that? Which mail house did you use? I think we so underestimate our knowledge in the sector. And if we could just
Hmm.
build more pods and like the DPP program, I think there's
Yeah.
real power.
And the value that lies kind of in the craft of fundraising, not just in the, oh yeah, donor continuum, yada yada, but exactly,
The,
how, what. Yeah,
I,
exactly. Yeah.
I often say that I pick up where the CFRE leaves off, like the book
Hmm.
knowledge, and then there's this whole other sort of soft skill, gut instinct.
Hmm.
I do think that we requires us to be incredibly vulnerable, to put ourselves out there, to be good at what we do, and I just want to be the kind of coach that elevates, champions, and supports those people
Oh,
because without that, I don't think we're going to move the dial on dollars raised. It just won't happen.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's wonderful to have people like you in the sector, and I know that we can create a band even with this little group that we have here on LinkedIn between Heather, you and I.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah, for
that's
sure.
great. I'm going to maybe do one last invitation to everybody who's on the call.
Okay.
To if like you have questions about what coaching actually is,
Yeah, great
or
question.
maybe what does it mean to do this in a group setting? Like it
Yeah,
sounds that some of your offerings facilitate.
yeah,
Um, we had a great session at DPP about executive coaching, and I know people found it very valuable. I have to admit, I was kind of a humbug going into it, but
yeah.
I'm a true believer now, just because of the conceptual shifts that you can
Well,
facilitate, right?
here's my analogy. I think this will help people understand the differences. So a mentor, so talking about riding a bike, a
Okay.
mentor says, "This is how I ride my bike." A consultant says, "This is how you ride the bike, and here are the steps."
Mm-hmm.
And a coach says, "How do you want to ride the bike, and what supports do you need to move forward?"
Mm-hmm.
So, a good coach is creating a space for self discovery, creating a space to challenge, to be accountable, and really kind of see the world, like I said about those narratives, see the world through a different lens. If you're stuck in the same lens, nobody understands me, my board doesn't get me, all those, the hurdles are too great, all that stuff, we get stuck in our story and we can't see past it. So that's where I think the value of a coach is. And then having the fundraising expertise, I think that's a really dynamite combo. But I do work with people that are not in not-for-profit world. You'd be surprised how much the similarities, they really do parlay, and it all comes down to you and your commitment to the work, and how you can, I'm talking about when you choose to be a coachee, not a coach, but a coachee, and being in partnership and in trust with that person as a coach. That's, I think, probably the most humbling part of my job, is to hold space for people that truly want to work on themselves. And I'm a big
That's so
champion.
interesting. And from my fantastic experience doing 2 sessions with professional, coaches, which is, I mean, I'm being facetious, but I have kind of noticed that you tend to appreciate the value of community to achieve work-related goals or kind of transformational goals. And I find this is very interesting. Is this something that is this part of your training, or did you just pick up on this as you went along? And you mentioned community among musicians, in a professional setting, and you mentioned at work, which is kind of the same type of community building you should be doing outside of work.
Well, I'm the person, like when I had little kids, where I would put them on the swing, and I'd find someone in the playground that I could connect with, and I would ask all sorts of questions, like, how long is your feeding cycle between cycles, and what time are you putting your kid to bed? Like, I was that person always. So I feel like I've been in community over many fronts. I just find that in the groups, normalizing the experiences is so powerful. I think people think it's always just them. And there is a great value. I have leadership breakfast groups. I have my Uplift Mastermind program. And I also work one-on-one. And some of the feedback I've been given, because I've asked that question, why is it so effective?
Okay.
And one of the responses they said was to not only receive value, but to give insight and expertise also is a powerful thing. To say, I have something to offer, and my years of experience, because you and I, Louis, we can both identify as fundraisers, but because of our experiences, they're completely different. That whole comparison piece starts to come in, right? Oh, well, that executive director has that, and that CEO has that, but nobody has ever had the same experience that you have had. So I think normalizing, talking things through, and feeling supported. I know when I feel supported, whether it's by my family or my girlfriends, I am so much stronger, and I can try new things. When I'm being attacked, when I'm being challenged, when I'm constantly defending my job, it's really hard to get out of your head. Really
having
hard.
that space to be vulnerable into, right? I messed up, so what? Just
and troubleshoot, right? Like a chance to sort of brainstorm and say, well, what if this happened? How would I handle that? So I really do believe in the power of learning communities, and I've had them throughout my life in many different forms. I'm just really committed to formalizing them and elevating them, and it works really well for busy executives, because we can hop on a call and people really look forward to them. It really puts a bounce in their step at work.
That's amazing. I found that exactly. Our little community was one of the best things that happened to me at work. Heather was also sharing. She had a wonderful coach she worked with in the past.
Yeah.
And he found it very helpful to create that space for self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we're not in the business. Great coaches are in the business of supporting, not fixing. I try to own that with my kids too. It's very easy to fall in. I know you have kids too, Louis. Fall into the habit of, there's nothing wrong with them, right? We're just looking to support them and elevate them through their journey. They came into this world. All of us came into this world already amazing. So how can we amplify that? That's my mission, or my goal for all of our communities, is to help people own their space at the table, use their voices, and leverage it for the good that we know we need.
This is absolutely beautiful. It's wonderful. My dad kind of laughs at consultants. He says,
Yeah.
why would you ever hire somebody when you have everything you need inside he's a business guy, in the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
But it applies to the person too. For the most part, we have what we need inside of us or inside of a colleague.
We
Um,
do.
it's
We
finding that,
do.
right? That's the hard part.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
That,
as talent development and talent retention becomes harder and harder,
Mhm.
we hire for skills and we fire for attitude. So how about we change that? How about we start hiring for attitude and hiring for enthusiasm? And I mean, I'm simplifying. I realize there's a heck of a lot of challenges. I feel for my folks that are in rural areas. I don't know about many of your listeners are in rural, but trying to find somebody who can be a stewardship officer, really hard right now across the board. I mean, it's tough.
My goodness, I've heard about these kind of imbalances, and I've heard about planned giving also in rural
Yeah.
areas being a huge challenge right now. That's so interesting. Well, Jenny, how should people connect with you if they want to continue a conversation or directly learn more about how you can help them? Is the website, is LinkedIn the best way? Just let us know.
Yeah. So my website is Chavender, which is like Chavender, like lavender, but with a CH at the beginning. Side note, it's a fish that lives on the east coast of Canada and the US. And it's a fish that can survive through cold water and warm water. It can be at the intersection of the salt water and the fresh water. It's extremely adaptable. And of course, I thought that was a fantastic name for a company that works with not-for-profits, because we adapt, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
So chavender.com, and you can always find me on LinkedIn as well. If you look under Jenny Mitchell, you can find me there. And I have a money mindset program coming up in the month of September, which is one of my personal passions. You talked about barriers, not being able to receive the money graciously, getting over your own money stories. You're a musician, so I'd love to have a sidebar with you about what you learned about money growing up and how your self-worth, because we go into music not for the money, but for the ideas and for the idealization of the lifestyle. So I've had to do a lot of work to kind of still put food on the table for my family. But I find that's a big barrier for a lot of professional fundraisers, is their own money values.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I hope lots of the folks that are here today can join you. For everybody, after you check out chavender.com, maybe look up our donor participation project. We have a session tomorrow. We're having tons of free community building programming to support each other to figure out what this thing of donor participation really means. How to, do we want it? Should we do it correctly, et cetera, et cetera. It's about relationships, deeper relationships, not just a ton of volume. But and then we're also piloting through a platform called Open Collective, some fundraising. So if you want to support the donor participation project and all our programming, there's levels. It's a fun page. So just check it out and let us know what you think. Thanks so much, Jenny. We appreciated having you today.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Take care.